Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. It shows me that you're interested in the future generation. It shows me that you're interested in the future, because if we start by looking at today's consumer, and if we go beyond that and look at the future consumer, we can anticipate on what's coming. So in the next half hour, I would like to tell you something about your future consumer. I will continue where Jonna left us. I will tell you something about what's driving the behavior of Generation Z. And hopefully, at the end of the presentation, you will be able to understand how you can stand out in all the opportunities that this generation has. And in between, I will also tell something about the future of loyalty from a consumer perspective. And not so long ago, I was at a conference like this in Paris for people just like you, business leaders from a different industry. And while I was in Paris, I was there with my boss. His name is Kees. And he told me, you know, I'm a very big fan of art. We should go to the Louvre before we go to the conference. I said, all right, let's go there. Have you ever been to the Louvre? Yeah? Have you any idea how many visitors the Louvre receives each and every year? 10 million people. It's the most visited museum in the world, but they have one big challenge. And that is reaching the younger audiences. So how do you do that? So I was there standing in line with Kees, me and Kees, two nobodies, walking around in the Louvre. But just a couple of months before I was there were two really famous people, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Do you know Mr. and Mrs. Carter? Also known as Beyoncé and Jay-Z, who recorded their latest video clip around their song Ape Shit. Maybe you've heard it pumping through the speakers of your little kids. And in that video clip, they take us along a journey of 18 different art pieces that describe the history of black people in our society. And they take a whole complete new perspective on that. And now, when I was standing there in line of that museum, without disturbing all the baby boomers and people from Generation X and other generations, I was offered a Mr. and Mrs. Carter audio tour, a customer experience specifically catered at Generation Z and me as a very old millennial. I didn't take the audio tour, but it showed me that this company is able to target Generation Z while not offending or abandoning the other generations. And I think that is something that we are all thinking about, right? You are all targeting all generations. So how do you stand out for all of them? How do you find themes that resonate with all of these generations? These are very important questions if you want to be relevant in the future. And to start with that today, I would like to take a deep dive into Generation Z. Now, what I will not do, not as much as the average speaker about Generation Z, and I was very happy that Jonna didn't do too, but usually when you hear about Generation Z, it's all about technology, right? They're growing up on an iPod, they learn how to swipe before they can even pee. Yes, it's a digital generation. Yes, they're often referred to as the selfie generation, because sometimes it seems that they're more occupied with wondering how they appear on social media instead of just watching the game. And for us as older generations, that sometimes feels a bit confusing. Eh? It seems that this younger generation has a fundamental human need, and that is Wi-Fi and battery life. Without that, they will not succeed in life. But technology is just part of the story. You can implement technology. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that you are successful. To be successful with implementing technology, to be disruptive with all these things that are coming along our way, they have to fit with a human need. If not, they will not be adopted. So let's dive into that human needs. My name is Aljan de Boer, and I work at TrendsActive as a head of inspiration. And at TrendsActive, we study trends. Now, trends go by many definitions. What we call a trend is a change in the behavior of your consumers, a change in society on which you can adapt as a company. Now, we do that for all kinds of companies all around the world, not just retailers, but all kinds of companies. And what we study is social cultural trends. And I have to explain you a little bit about how we look at that world of trends to help you understand the rest of the story a bit better. Now, in my world, the world of trend researchers, trend watchers, and futurists, there are three types of trends. Way on top, we have the macro trends. McKinsey called them global forces. These are big shifts that happen in society that we cannot influence. They're just there. Think of a financial crisis. Think of a climate change. These things are just there. It's hard to use those trends for innovation. So what we do at TrendsActive is we wonder ourselves, what is the effect of these macro trends on the behavior of people? How do people feel in times of climate change, financial crisis, an aging population, geopolitical tensions, all these kind of big shifts in society? Because if you understand the effect on people, you will be able to become more customer-centric. Now, on the most tangible level, we have product and market trends. These are the trends that you all see. Think of a product trend, the grooming products. That's a very growing market, because nowadays lots of guys have a beard, right? You see those, how do we call these people? Hipsters, exactly. All of a sudden the hipster is here in society, so what do most companies do? They put a hipster in their advertising, hoping to, I don't know, engage millennials, something like that. They're now also hopsters. Do you know what a hopster is? It's a hipster brewing his own beer. Very important trend, especially when you're working in the beer industry. Now that's what we call a product trend, something that just comes in a market. Now what's often happening is that lots of companies just copy-paste these product trends. That's not differentiating. And as we are here to differentiate ourselves, we're going to look beyond that. So what we do at TrendsActive is we wonder ourselves, where does this guy come from? Why does these kind of fashion trends or product trends all of a sudden appear in society? Now, there are also market trends. Now, in your market, one of the big trends that is happening now is subscription-based e-commerce, right? Someone shops, throws everything in a box, ships it to your doorstep, and you're in business. It changes the whole concept of loyalty, because what's in the box often doesn't get out of the box, and trying new things is definitely changing. So what's happening is that each and every one in your industry also wants to do with subscription-based e-commerce. You recognize people working on product and market trends by this following sentence: we should also do something with. You recognize that? Does that happen in your innovation teams as well? But where does this trend come from? Why did this subscription-based e-commerce, where did it come from? Because we had the technology for years, right? But why did it got adopted last few years? And why is it that Generation X, here in Europe, is using these kind of subscription-based e-commerce models more than, for example, millennials? Because the millennials are the digital generation, right? So what we do at TrendsActive is wonder ourselves, where do these trends come from? And if we understand why these things are happening, we can also find our own differentiating role in tapping into these kind of trends. And we do that with social cultural trends. And they describe the changing needs and behavior of people. Now we have 10 trends at TrendsActive, divided in gender. We look at women, we look at men. What we see is the feminization in society, a very important trend, of course, so you have to embrace more female values. Lots of men now also have to take part in the household, doing the more traditional female roles. For example, cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids. Now that feels a bit uncomfortable for lots of men, so what they do is they take a man cave, a toxic cactus and a big beard to show their manlyhood. So actually that whole hipster thing is just a manifestation of something bigger that is going on in society. We look at generations, older generations, younger generations, although you should never call a baby boomer old, because they're still vital. They're living their third age, what we call. And we have a few societal trends that cover each and every one of us in society. Now, what we do at TrendsActive is we look at these trends from two perspectives. One is we do desk research into everything that other research agencies and other trend watchers are publishing. And we connect that to the fields of the human sciences. Think of sociology, psychology, anthropology. There's a whole academic field out there that truly understands why people behave in a certain way. And these people don't call them customers or consumers. No, they call them people. And by connecting these two worlds, we can give you a contextualized picture on why people do the things that they do. And when you understand why people do the things they do, you can also understand how you can tap into that behavior. So let's take a deep dive into Generation Z. Now, one very important theory that comes from sociology is called the formative years. If you want to understand the generation, you have to look at their formative years. And the formative years are the years between someone's 10th and 25th birthday. Because around your 10th birthday, you start to become an adolescent. You're going to wear funny clothes, you're going to listen to new music every day, you're going to hate your parents, you become an adolescent. You are really forming your identity. Maybe you have kids around this age, very difficult to take care of, right? And that forming your identity keeps on going until the moment that you're 25. According to psychologists, the brain stops to grow after 25. With some people a bit earlier, but on average, around 25 is the time your brain doesn't grow that fast anymore. So everything that happens in that period of your life, what happens in the economy, what happens in culture, what happens in politics, what happens in terms of technology, what happens in terms of parenting styles, all influences you. It forms you, each and every one of you. So if we want to understand someone, we have to go back to that formative years. Now, if we look at Gen Z, people between 4 and 21 years old, they're right in the middle of that formative years. They are still forming their identity. So scientifically speaking, it's quite difficult to say something about this generation, but of course we can make a very educated guess by looking at what's going on within the economy, within culture, within politics, within technology, within parenting. So let's do that. Let's take a deep dive into their behavior, and then we will find out why this generation is very realistic, like Jonna told us before, why they have a make-it-happen mentality, and how you as an organization can tap into these trends. As we've seen the last year, is that these kids are becoming activists. They are fighting against climate change. And this little girl is, of course, the most famous one. But if you look at research, and you ask different generations, this might look like a superficial kind of interest, foodies and fit girls and fit boys, but it's actually a manifestation of a deeper underlying need, and that is a desire to live more healthy and more responsible. We see that across the globe, all over research, that this generation is really taking a different outlook on things like food and sports activities. Maybe because lots of them have obesity, but it's definitely a big trend. So the conclusion here of chapter 1 is that they're very realistic. Now, what does that mean for you as an organization? How can you become successful if you know that a generation is very realistic, although they are kids? Yeah, you have to cater to that realistic mindset. Now, there are a few ways of doing that. One is show your benefits for society. What is it that you're doing for the greater good? Second, how do you benefit them as an individual? How do you make sure that their future is a successful one? And the third one is don't bullshit them. Be real in your advertising. Try to provoke sometimes, because that really resonates with this generation. Now let's look at a few examples of different companies from your industry and outside of your industry to see how they cater to that realistic mindset of Generation Z. We've talked about Patagonia before. What I like so much about Patagonia, there is a big bank in Colombia, Banco Colombia, and what they do is they invented the Sustainability University. Because what they see is that sustainability is an important issue for the future. And what they would like to do is to educate their citizens. And what they did is they worked together with Google, and they're now offering you a customer experience in which you can pay a visit to a little island just off the coast of Colombia. And you see me here visiting their website. And when you enter the island, you can meet the local people of the island. And these people have to see the fact that they're realistic. We have to cater to the realistic mindset in the sense that we want to do something for society, want to do something for them as an individual, or don't bullshit them. Now, this is driven by the fact that they're growing up in a certain political time, a certain society and culture of today of negativism or of activism, which is very positive. But there is something else going on. That's technology and parenting styles. And the effect of that is that they have a make-it-happen mentality. Now, I don't know how your desk looked like when you went to work back in the days, but the desk of my father almost looked like this. And nowadays, it's completely different. We all have our wearable devices, our mobile devices, and everything just fits in one mobile. So these kids are called the mobile natives. Hard to reach them. I know that for myself, I have 2 little kids. One is 5, the other one is 2.5. And my oldest son, he likes to sit on his iPad, play around and watch videos. And I don't believe that there is a lot of educative value in most YouTube content. So I always encourage him to go to Netflix, but he likes to play on his iPad because then he's in charge. And I came home the other day and he was playing around on his iPad, and all of a sudden I heard him screaming, "Oh no, advertising again, fuck." And I'm a marketing guy, I like advertising. So I walked towards him and said, "Dude, what's going on?" I said, "Yeah, I just want to try to watch a video. Spider-Man is dancing around there, and then all of a sudden there is this brand fighting for my attention." I said, "But do you know that there's a whole bunch of marketing people that are trying to optimize your customer experience with beautiful content on the right device, on the right moment, just to be relevant for you?" And he was looking at me, 5 years old. He said, "Daddy, you are not customer-centric when you are showing me videos that are just for mommy, while mommy is not even using this iPad. I said, okay, good point, I'll take that with me. So here it is. So it's hard to reach them, right? It's very difficult to reach those youngsters. So technology has a big influence. The have and make it happen mentality, it is difficult to reach them. But there's another very important big influence, and that comes from a field of science that you hardly see when you're talking to business people. It's the science of parenting, pedagogy. It's called, very difficult word in English. These kids are raised by drone parents, stealth fighter parents. Now, to give you a little crash course in generation thinking, we get a generation that is very much into technology, and the whole society is telling them that they have very big challenges. The thing is that they believe that happiness is a choice, not a chance. 73% of the generation believes that. Research done amongst 50,000 kids all over the globe. 83% of these kids have no idea how to find happiness. 96% of these kids do something just for the sake of happiness sometimes. What does that tell me is that when you are in loyalty programs or when you are a retailer, that at one point you should be very sensible and responsible and healthy and sustainable. But don't forget their kids. They just want to be happy. So deliver some happiness nowadays. Very important. Co-creating with you. Let me show you a few commercial examples from inside and outside your industry. This is Kidzania. It's a theme park to have fun. But what they do is they provide kids with 60 different real-life role-playing games in which you can find out. They created new cans, different colors, and on the cans there was a secret code. And when the kids, in Australia, an experiment for teens, the kids found out that there was a code on this little can. Of the population will be part of Gen Z. We know from research that they influence about 90% of the purchase decisions of their parents. So there's a big market out there. And I think the challenge for you guys would be to provide them with responsible happiness in order to be customer-centric and be relevant for them today and in the future. Thanks a lot.